Average asking prices for newly marketed properties in the UK slumped by 2.3% in August, according to the latest Rightmove House Price Index. It was dragged lower by London and the South East. Joining me now to discuss the outlook for London house prices is Jeremy Leaf, a London estate agent and former RICS residential chairman. He joins us down the line via Skype from London. Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us. So let's start with the data then. What's your take on the latest house price data that we've been seeing?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because it's quite a change from last month where Rightmove were quite optimistic. But don't forget, of course, these are asking prices rather than selling prices. So it's more of an indicator of what's happening in terms of what people are asking. And a lot of property gets withdrawn, a lot of property isn't sold. So it needs to be put into context with other surveys as well, in my opinion.
So surely there's going to be an upward bias in these numbers?
Well, there will be a bit of a bias upwards, but actually the numbers are more downward rather than upward. But certainly, yeah, certainly with Rightmove, it tends to be a little bit more optimistic in terms of prices because people are hoping for these figures rather than getting them necessarily.
All right, so can you give us a sense of what's going on with house prices right now in the country compared with London?
Yeah, well, Rightmove does pick up on this quite well in that it's showing that prices, asking prices are it still tracks the movements and the trends, which is very useful and interesting. It's showing that London, actually, if you take London and the South East out of the equation, the figures are a lot better than they are and the rest of the country are much better if you take those out. And what that's showing is probably affordability issues are really hurting buyers in the capital, whereas outside London it's not so bad, and affordability is better and there's more activity.
So I know you're obviously focused on London, so I wanted to get your take on what's going on with prices at the very top end, the likes of Kensington and Chelsea or the City.
Yeah, well, in those areas they've been more affected by the stamp duty change in December of 2014. Although at the time, I think the government, a lot of commentators felt that was only affecting the top end of the market. But what's happened since then, it's had a trickle-down effect on the rest of the market. So although prices have definitely softened there's no doubt that chains form part of from the higher end right the way down, and that's had an impact on the activity and what's happening in the rest of the market.
So what's happening in terms of the softening in the market? Like, what's driving it? Is it all because of Brexit, or are there other factors at play?
Oh yeah, there's lots of factors. There's never usually one silver bullet you can say, oh, that's the cause or that's the culprit. There's always lots of things which are at play, but certainly Brexit is a big one, because although it's very difficult to quantify, oh, it's 5%, 10% or whatever of the market, it just adds that to that indecision and lacking of confidence for when people are wanting to take on debt. And with prices having risen so far and so fast up to the period of the referendum, in anticipation perhaps of a more positive result one way or the other, that has made a lot of difference to people having confidence to actually move.
What about foreign investors into the UK market? Surely that's creating a lot of uncertainty. I'm thinking particularly at the top end, the likes of people from Russia, for example.
Yeah, well, it's changed. Of course, activity from there is driven a lot by what's happening in the domestic economy as well as the value of the pound and the value of property here, whether it's perceived to be attractive compared with perhaps other parts of Europe in terms of a place to invest. But certainly the government have tried to attack the investors. They've realised or appreciated that perhaps the profits have been too high, and they have they've increased the taxes, which has had another effect on reducing activity, prices, and so the market is softer in London than it has been.
But if you're talking about currencies, then why isn't the sell-off in sterling helping to spur demand from abroad?
Well, it has done to some extent. It certainly did initially, but it's held off a bit now partly because of the Brexit uncertainty.
Now, we saw the Bank of England raise rates by 1/4 of a point just a few weeks ago. Do you think that is potentially weighing on the market as well?
Yeah, inevitably it will do. Not so much initially, because of course so many mortgages these days are on fixed rates, so they may not mature for a year or two or even more. So that takes a while to filter through. But again, it's one of those issues that does have an effect on confidence, particularly at the lower end of the market for first-time buyers. Although they're helped with stamp duty abolition, the cost it weighs much more heavily if their loans are a higher proportion of the purchase price.
So I wanted to ask you about the first-time buyers market. market. How much is that abolition of the stamp duty last year acting as a helping hand for those wanting to get on the property ladder?
Yeah, definitely. We've seen the numbers of first-time buyers increasing, and not just because of that abolition, but also because the tax and regulation changes on investors has meant that they are not competing as strongly with those smaller properties, 1 and 2 bedroom flats and houses. So it's given the first-time buyer a more of a clear run at those properties, and it's definitely leveled the playing field, which is what George Osborne's intention was at the time.
Now, just before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about the outlook for the market as we move forward, as people come back from their summer holidays. Are you expecting to see a pickup in demand as we head into autumn?
Yeah, autumn is always a better time for the market, and particularly for the lettings market, because people are making decisions in terms of jobs and homes and so on. Always we find September, October is the busier time for lettings, but also for sales, because there's so many people away. You only have to drive around the roads of London and look around the people who are walking around. There's just fewer people everywhere, it seems. But still, there are people who take this time off to try and find a property, ones that want to be in by Christmas or so on. But yeah, I'm expecting a little bit of a pickup, but no major changes.
All right, well, we'll have to watch out for that back-to-school effect.
Okay,
Jeremy,
Victoria,
thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure.
That was Jeremy Lee, for London estate agent and former RICS residential chairman. Thanks so much for watching IGTV. I'm Victoria Scholar, and we'll see you very soon.
Subscribe to IG for educational content, company insight, financial analysis and expert commentary.